Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about week 0. Cannot wait for everything to get underway tomorrow. It's going to be really fun one over there in Dublin, and one that definitely does define the end of the season. It'll start the season in week 0. Cannot wait for that one. But let's get into some fall camp intel. There is a number of things to talk about and a number of quarterbacks to talk about. We'll mainly get into the quarterbacks today, as well as a couple of injury news, and then on Monday we'll get into a little bit more nitty-gritty stuff. There's a big time receiver showing up at A&M. Miami's back end's playing really well in practice right now. A number of things to talk about on Monday, but let's get into the quarterback. Let's focus on that today, and we'll start over there in Columbus, Ohio. It is going to be Julian Sayin, as a lot of us expected pretty much from the start of the offseason until now. It was going to be Julian Sayin. I think the coaching staff thought that as well. He finally has taken the job. I think he had a great scrimmage this past weekend. He is going to be the starter for the Texas game, and it's a very interesting set of circumstances. I think Lincoln Kienholz is going to be a part of the game plan. I think he is going to be used in goal line packages, in third downs, and short fourth downs, because he's a little bit more of a capable runner. He's absolutely a guy that can extend plays, a little bit more of that Will Howard type player. Julian Sayin a little bit more of that CJ Stroud, Bryce Young type player that Ohio State is familiar with, especially in the CJ Stroud case. But at the end of the day, very talented kid. Can make every throw in the book. Absolutely someone that I think at the end of the season is going to be regarded as a top 10 quarterback in college football. I think he's going to be viewed as a Heisman finalist going into 2026. The problem is quarterbacks making their very first start against the number 1 team in the country are 0-18. So that's the question you have to answer. To be totally fair, a lot of those games are against layups in week 1. Some of those games have been big-time games, but at the end of the day, this one's going to be fun. It's two of the more talented throwers of the football that you will see in the entire country this year, going at it in a couple of days, in 8 days, down there in Columbus, Ohio. Julian Sayin will be leading the Buckeyes going into this one. Notre Dame named CJ Carr their starter going into the season. Another one that I think everyone expected throughout the offseason. Now, I think Kenny Minchey made this a little bit tougher than Lincoln Kienholz did on Julian Sayin. So Kenny Minchey, again, absolutely will be a part of this game plan. He will be a part of the run game. He will be part of the red zone if I had to imagine. He's too athletic of a kid to keep on the sideline. So I think he will be a part of this team. I also think the leash is not going to be all that long for CJ Carr. So if he goes into Miami, really struggles in week 1, I don't know if he keeps that job too much longer. So this is going to be an interesting one to watch going into the season. I also think CJ Carr is a really good player. I think he ups the game that they can do in the pass game a ton. I think he makes that offense really dangerous and possibly open some more doors for Jeremiah Love in the run game. I think Kenny Minchey would have done more than fine, but you would have seen more stacked boxes with Kenny Minchey back there at quarterback. With CJ Carr, he's going to have to prove it now. He's going to have to prove that teams have to respect the pass, but he's a very talented passer. I think he's going to be a force for people to deal with, and he's going to be a guy that we're going to be talking about at the end of the season, much like Julian Sayin, as maybe this guy can win the Heisman in 2026. Joey Aguilar has been named the starter over at Tennessee. Another one we expected. Now, he did have to beat out Jake Merklinger in a short period of time. So it's very interesting, but it does complete the trade between UCLA and Tennessee. It sounds like they're paying just about the same amount as well. So it is an outright trade between Nico Iamaleava and Joey Aguilar. We'll see how it works out. It's going to be one of the more interesting kind of subplots in this college football season is Joey Aguilar against Nico Iamaleava and how that plays out. I think the big thing to remember here is Joey Aguilar is not going to put the ball in his pocket. I can almost promise you that. So Tennessee fans that have been watching these games and said, that guy's wide open, why isn't Nico ripping the ball? I don't think you're going to have that anymore. I think you're going to have a guy that steps back, that rips balls when they're there. He's going to make some mistakes. I can almost promise you that. He is not going to be this perfect quarterback by any means. He's going to throw the ball into windows that might be a little bit tight. But at the end of the day, this Tennessee offense does not work to the top capability if you can't push the ball downfield. And if you're not aggressive with the ball downfield, this kid will be. I can almost promise you that. He's a very talented kid. Obviously, some big-time questions around him taking the big-time leap up in competition. He's going to make some big plays. He's going to make some boneheaded plays. I think the Tennessee offense is going to be more fun, but a little bit more bipolar, I suppose, going into this season with Joey Aguilar rather than Nico Iamaleava. Doesn't mean the ceiling couldn't be higher with this kid at quarterback. Steve Angeli won the Syracuse job, another one that I fully expected him to beat out Ricky Collins, but Ricky Collins is a very talented kid. It didn't take many practices for Steve Angeli to beat him out either. He was a portal guy in the spring, so he kind of came on and 15 or so practices and won this job. And it's not surprising to me really at all. A lot of stability with this kid, a little bit more better of a thrower of the football than I think he gets credit for, but is a little bit of that dual threat. Now, Kyle McCord wasn't a year ago, so we'll see how that kind of develops, how he does he use the run game a little bit? Is he a little bit more of that drop back pocket passer with Ricky Collins being a little bit more of that run threat? There are a number of ways they can go about this. Overall, I think this guy brings stability. And I think when we're talking about Syracuse going into this season, they had a quarterback that was really, really good a year ago. I think they just need to be able to know that the quarterback they have back there is not making mistakes, is not pushing the ball into really tight windows, and is just making the right play. And I think they got that in Steve Angeli. I don't know if it'll be a banner season when it comes to the numbers. I think he will put up a very nice season, and Syracuse will be plenty happy about this decision. Jaren Sagapolo-Tele is going to take over at Cal as the QB1. This one was a little bit surprising to me. He beat out Devin Brown, the transfer from Ohio State, for this job, and he left Oregon pretty early on to get the playing time at Cal, so it's paying off for him. He's a very interesting player, absolutely a guy that can rip the ball, someone that I think he's going to make a lot of classic freshman mistakes. I don't think Cal's going to be a great football team this year. I do think going into 2026, he could make this team very, very excited if they're not eliminating their college football program, which is something we can talk about a little bit later on, but that's definitely something that could be happening. I don't want to say soon, but at some point in the future. Regardless, as of right now, you have your quarterback for this season. I think he is uniquely talented. Bear Bachmeier has won the BYU job, another one that I fully expected. I think this kid was going to win it the second that Jake Retzlaff walked out the door. Like McKay Hillstead, they're probably not starting a kid that's 5'10 or 5'8 at quarterback. I'm just being totally honest. So Bear Bachmeier, he's going to be your quarterback. If he wears 47, he better play good quarterback, and he better be able to run through people, because I don't think you can wear 47 and not be a guy that is willing to run through someone's face. But at the end of the day, he's a very talented kid. I think there's going to be mistakes. I think BYU is making this decision because they want him to be the future. And now they have a really talented kid coming in next year in Ryder Lyons. But at the end of the day, I think this is more the ceiling that this kid brings, and I think he will bring some really good plays. I think he'll have some really disastrous plays, and I think they will lose certain games because of this. But at the end of the day, I think that was going to be the case the second that Jake Retzlaff walked out the door. So not necessarily a massive deal, but absolutely something to watch. Missouri is going to play both quarterbacks against Central Arkansas in Week 1. This is going to be something to watch. Bo Pribula left his team to go be the starter at Missouri. He has not won that job, and he's been given more than a fair chance to win that job. He has not done that yet. He better win that job, because they're putting quite a bit of money into this kid being their starter this upcoming year. Now, Sam Horn can get the job done. I feel very confident in that. I think this kid understands the offense. I think that's why he's still in this quarterback battle. But at the end of the day, this got to be Bo Pribula's team. If he went all that way, took all that money in Missouri, he's going to be very upset if that was the case. But at the end of the day, it's going to be a really interesting thing to watch in Week 1. I doubt they'll have their answer after Central Arkansas, so this might go into Week 2 and maybe even into Week 3, but they got to figure it out here at least relatively soon. Auburn could play 3 quarterbacks in Week 1. Hugh Freeze was asked about the possibility of playing 3 quarterbacks against Baylor. He said, yeah. He's not going to play 3 quarterbacks against Baylor unless he's outright out of his mind, which maybe he is at the end of the day. I don't know. But at the end of the day, if he was, it would be Jackson Arnold, Ashton Daniels, and Deuce Knight. And I'll be totally honest with you, I think Deuce Knight's going to be the starter for this team at some point this year. I think that kid is uniquely talented. I think there's going to come a point where Hugh Freeze might have to save his job just a little bit, and you throw the freshman out there. But at the end of the day, we'll see what happens here. They already have 3 play callers for every single down, first, second, and third. Now they have 3 quarterbacks. They have a lot of different options for how they can go about this thing. But at the end of the day, if they're planning to play 3 quarterbacks against Baylor and against Dave Aranda, it's not going to go well. I'm just going to be totally honest. These guys are going to make mistakes. These wide receivers are going to be very confused, especially when you put a lefty in there after a righty. It's going to be a weird thing. I don't think they're going to play 3. I think they're going to play 1, maybe 2 with Ashton Daniels. But at the end of the day, you never really count out anything when you're talking about Hugh Freeze. We'll see what happens, and I think if they play 3, it's going to be an absolute nightmare against Baylor and Dave Aranda. Injury updates. Quentin Joyner is out for the season. This stinks. It's a very, very talented kid that just never really got the injury luck that he needed. He always felt a little bit hampered when he was at USC. He was a guy that went for a number of really, really big-time plays, had more yards per carry than a number of quarterbacks had yards per attempt a year ago. It's a very talented kid, and losing him changes the dynamic in that room. Now, Jacoby Williams is someone that was very, very talented his freshman year. Same with Cameron Dickey. So they have a talented duo. There's no doubt about that. I think this guy was going to tote the rock a lot, and I think he was going to kind of lead this offense in a number of different ways. This is a big-time loss. There's no doubt about that. Everyone else is going to have to pull their weight, and I think Jacoby Williams and Cameron Dickey are more than capable of doing that. We won't know until midway through the season. I think Quentin Joyner just made that thing a lot more stable. Now it's a little bit rickety at times. Andrew Babalola is expected to miss the season, likely, with Michigan. This is definitely a loss for Michigan. Now, I don't think he was going to start. I think it's kind of that Texas situation where likely was not going to be the starter, but now Brady Norton and Ty Haywood and guys that they probably were ready to let sit and get comfortable for a year have to be ready. Now, they might not have to play, they might not have to start for this team, but at some point they're going to have to be ready the same way a Nick Brooks or a Jaden Chapman is for Texas right now with Andre Kojo going down. So this is a very talented player. This is a kid that is going to be a 3-year starter for this team if I had to imagine. Losing him for the season is not ideal. They should be okay at the tackle position, but definitely does get a little bit thinner, and Brady Norton's going to have to be fully ready to go in at left tackle or right tackle really at the drop of a hat this upcoming season because of this big-time loss. And then some good injury news. On the other side of things, Sark is no longer being cautious, quote-unquote, with CJ Baxter. He said he is ready to roll. We're going to roll him out there against Ohio State, and we're going to let him do his thing. He's a very, very talented player. I think that he was what was missing from that Texas offense a year ago because they couldn't put games away. They couldn't put games away in the fourth quarter. They let way too many games become losses that were going to be close wins or let comfortable wins become close wins because they didn't have a put-away running back. I think this guy's it. So if he's 100% or at least close to it going into that Ohio State game, this Texas offense gets that a little bit more scary, and I think this guy, I think people are forgetting just how talented he was his freshman year. I think he could put on a show this year if he is fully ready, and seems like he is. According to Steve Sarkisian, he is 100%, and he will be on the field against Ohio State. That is massive for a Texas team that I think was a little bit wary of getting this guy back before really SEC play started. He's going to be back and ready to roll, and it's going to be a terrifying offense already, a little bit more terrifying with number 4 in the backfield. But we'll get to all of that, obviously, in time. We have some more fall camp stuff on Monday for sure. Definitely some different things to break down as we get into week 1. But let's take another break here. When we come back, we got to talk about my favorite bets going into this year. I have 4 win totals that I think are going to be really just layups, in my opinion. And then I got 4 Heisman bets that are a little bit out of the ordinary, but absolutely ones that might be worth just a little bit of a sprinkle. But we'll talk about it right after this, so stick with us.